Snow had fallen all night, thick enough to swallow the narrow road leading to my small veterinary clinic foster animal care. Outside, the wind howled through the Teton Range, battering the glass windows, as if to tear down the little mountain town of Jackson, curled up beneath the winter storm. Hannah Foster, 32, a veterinarian single living with a mixed-breed German Shepherd named Thor, was just about to lock up, certain no one in their right mind would bring a pet out in weather like this. I reached for the light switch when a loud pounding startled me. Not a knock, but pounding, urgent and desperate. My heart jumped, hammering painfully. "I'm sorry, the clinic's closed," I called out, voice trembling slightly. Silence. Then a low groan, rough horse full of pain. "Please, help me. They'll find me at the hospital." The wind carried those words away, making them sound distant, ghost-like, but something in that voice, raw and honest, made it impossible to ignore. Through the fogged-up glass, I saw a tall figure staggering through the whiteout. One heartbeat of hesitation, then I unlocked the door. The man collapsed into me, nearly bringing us both down. I only reached his shoulder, yet somehow managed to brace half his blood-soaked weight. Under the harsh fluorescent light, his face came into view, sharp-edged, handsome but pale as wax. A bullet wound had torn through his left shoulder, blood soaking his white shirt, mixing with the smell of snow and iron. "You've been shot?" I asked, trying to keep calm. "Through and through," I think he muttered. I dragged him inside and locked the door, my hands shaking. As I pulled off his coat, details began to stand out. Italian silk, silver buttons, tailored slacks. Not the kind of man you'd expect to find bleeding in rural Wyoming during a blizzard. Thor burst from the back room, growling. "Thor! No, sit!" I shouted. He froze, hackles raised, brown eyes locked on the stranger. The man winced, but spoke in a voice deep and steady despite the pain. "Your dog is loyal. He knows who to trust," I replied. A faint smile ghosted across his lips before he lost consciousness. I worked through the panic, mechanical. Cleaned the wound, stitched 18 stitches, stopped the bleeding, and injected antibiotics. Every movement felt surreal, like I was trapped in a dream I didn't dare wake from. Each time I looked up, I caught sight of a tattoo beneath his collar, an eagle with spread wings inked in dark, precise lines. Around it was an old V-shaped scar, like a mark of something secret and dangerous. When I finally finished bandaging him, he stirred, eyes opening slowly. They were gray, blue, cold, yet deep as glacial water. I forgot to breathe. "I'm alive for now. And you owe me a clean shirt." He gave a short, strained laugh, wincing. "My name is Vincent. Vincent who Hale." The name made me pause. I'd heard it before, Vincent Hale, founder of Hale Dynamics Logistics, the youngest billionaire in America 5 years ago. But he'd vanished from the media 2 years back, after a financial scandal that was never explained. I said nothing, wiping blood from my hands, mind racing. Why would Vincent Hale be bleeding in my clinic during a storm? He tried to sit up, eyes drifting toward the photo on the wall, me and Thor smiling beneath the clinic sign on opening day. "You live alone. No one has the patience to live with me in a town like this. Or maybe they lack courage." I pretended not to hear, fetching painkillers, ignoring the way his gaze flicked around the room, as if memorizing the exits. "You should stay here tonight. Don't move too much. You've lost a lot of blood. If they track me to Jackson, staying will only endanger you." "Who are they?" "People who don't understand limits." He said it lightly, like discussing the weather. Yet a chill spread through me despite the roaring fire. Thor crept closer, sniffed his hand, and strangely lay beside him. That had never happened with anyone but me. I murmured, "He's never done that with a stranger." Vincent's lips curved faintly. Maybe because I need to be trusted too. A simple sentence, but it stayed with me. Around midnight, while I was checking his bandage, Vincent opened his eyes again, voice hoarse. "You haven't asked why I was shot. I heal wounds. I don't interrogate people. If I told you, you might change your mind. I'm used to it. Everyone has a past." He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled the weary smile of a man who had seen too much blood but chose silence instead. Outside wind screamed across the cabin walls. I turned up the heater, the room filled with warmth and mist. Vincent's eyelids drooped, his brow finally relaxing. I sat quietly watching him, this stranger who had crashed into my life like an unexpected wound. I had never realized that danger could feel this peaceful. I must have dozed off on the couch near dawn when Thor growled softly. A beam of headlights cut across the window, stopping at the door. My heart seized. Vincent shot up instantly, far too fast for a man with 18 stitches. His movements were sharp, precise. He motioned for silence and pulled a small silver gun from his waistband, which definitely hadn't been in any pocket when he arrived. "Someone found me. What if I'm right? You need to go to the back room and lock the door, and I'll handle it." His voice was calm, but his eyes had gone dark, the stillness before a storm. Then came the pounding again, this time, not desperate but threatening. I started toward the door, but Vincent caught my wrist, whispering near my ear, "Hannah, trust me this once." How he said my name low, rough-weighted, made my heart trip over itself. I nodded. The door shuddered under a second blow. A strange male voice shouted, "Open up, Dr. Foster! We know someone's in there with you." I looked at Vincent. He raised a finger to his lips, finger steady on the trigger. Thor growled, every muscle tense. And then a flash of lightning illuminated the glass, revealing Vincent's face, cold, composed, and terrifyingly beautiful. In that instant, I understood the man I'd saved last night was not the victim. He was the cause of this storm. If you want to know what happens when that door opens, who's looking for Vincent Hale, and what forces Hannah must face to choose between saving a man and saving herself, don't miss part 2 of the story. Don't forget to follow the channel and share your thoughts. Every comment is a spark that keeps these stories alive. The pounding came a third time hard enough to make the wooden frame tremble. Thor barked furiously. I stood frozen, my hand still trapped in Vincent's grip, until my fingers went numb. Outside, the snowstorm howled, swallowing the voices beyond. But one sentence cut through the wind. "We know he's in there." Vincent pressed against the wall. Silver gun aimed at the door. I had never seen eyes like that before, so alert, so cold they hardly looked human. He gestured sharply, lips forming the words, "Go back." I stepped backward, heart pounding wildly. But before I could move, he tightened his hold, a slight deliberate squeeze that seemed to say, "Don't be afraid." It lasted only a moment, yet it told me enough whatever stood beyond that door wasn't just danger. It was an entirely different world. The door burst open. A gust of snow roared in along with 2 men in heavy coats, guns already drawn. They weren't police, their eyes stances trigger-ready posture, too trained, too familiar with blood. Vincent didn't hesitate, 2 gunshots clean precise. One man fell. The other stumbled, shouting, lunging toward me. I barely heard Vincent yell. Down a flash, the crack of gunfire, the sharp smell of gunpowder and blood, then silence. I sank to the floor, trembling. Thor stood guard before me, growling softly, locked on the body lying face down a few feet away. Vincent stepped forward, disarmed the man who was still breathing, then said quietly, "You shouldn't have seen this." I looked up at him. "You just killed 2 people. I just saved you." There was no defensiveness in his tone, only cold fact. And strangely, I couldn't argue with it. He pulled out a phone, speaking rapid Italian, low-clipped, efficient, like a knife's edge. I caught one word repeated several times, "Polizia cleanup." When he hung up, his voice softened. "They'll be here in 10 minutes, my people. We need to leave now, your people." These men weren't ordinary mercenaries, Hannah. They belonged to Vieri. The name Vieri seemed to make the air heavier when he said it. "And me?" I asked. "I'm just the one who stitched you up. Why should I run? Because you've seen my face and now they know you exist." I looked around my clinic, the place I had built over 7 years, from the sleepless nights of my internship to the day I hung my first sign. The smell of antiseptic pine wood and the dry hay in the horse feed box suddenly felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else's life. "I can't leave. This is my home. Your home will burn if you stay." Vincent's voice wasn't loud, but each word hit like ice. He retook my hand, not with force this time, but with pleading. "Trust me, just one night. I'll bring you back." I didn't know why I nodded. Maybe it was the truth in his eyes, cold but honest. Or perhaps it was because the storm was screaming outside like the world was falling apart. We left Jackson just past 3 in the morning. My pickup slid across the thin layer of ice headlights sweeping over rows of snow-covered trees. Vincent sat in the passenger seat, shoulder-bandaged gun hidden beneath his coat. The dim light brushed across his face, weary, ruthless. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" I asked, unsure if curiosity or fear made me speak. "I was taught how to survive before I learned how to sign a contract." Meaning? I grew up in a family where trust was a luxury." He glanced at me, catching my sideways look, holding it as if he could read every thought I hadn't said. "And you, Hannah? A small-town vet in the middle of winter? What are you running from?" I gave a faint, tired laugh. "People think I chose this place for peace. I just wanted silence. I used to work in Boston City Life Hospital's blood smell and sirens. One night, I saved a dog's life after surgery. The next day, its owner abandoned it. That was the last straw. I left. I couldn't stand the kind of saving that always ends in loss." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "We may be more alike than you think. Because you're running too, no. Because I once believed I could draw a clean line between good and evil." He said it softly, a confession more than an answer. Outside, snow kept falling white and weightless like ashes. An hour later, we stopped before a secluded log cabin on the mountain's edge. No lights, no sign. Vincent knocked 3 times. An older man with a gray beard opened the door, dressed in a heavy black coat, holding a hunting rifle. When he recognized Vincent, he only nodded. "Boss." The word made my skin crawl. Vincent replied evenly, switching back to English. "This is Hannah Foster. She needs rest. Prepare a room inside." Boss, I echoed after the door shut behind us. I told you I'm not safe. But here you are. He walked past the small fire burning in the hearth. The dark coat framed his broad shoulders, his steps unhurried but firm. Up close, I noticed the scar running down the back of his neck. Not a new wound, but an old memory. Who are you really, Vincent Hale? A man trying to escape the game he built himself. He made coffee. The strong, bitter aroma filled the wooden cabin. I sat across from him, hands wrapped around a steaming mug I couldn't bring myself to drink. Vincent watched me, his gaze softening a rare gentleness amid the storm. I know you're afraid of me, and of whatever pulled you into this mess. I'm not afraid of you, I lied too quickly. Good, he smiled faintly, because if you were, you wouldn't have opened that door last night. The air went still. I didn't know whether to feel brave or foolish. When the fire had burned down to embers, Vincent stood and moved toward the window. Moonlight brushed across his shoulder, catching the white bandage beneath his black shirt. If the sky clears by morning, I'll take you home. If it doesn't what? Then you'll have to trust me again. His voice was quiet, but something in it made my chest tighten. Thor lay by his feet calm now, as if he sensed something I hadn't yet understood in Vincent. For a brief moment, the wind outside fell silent, as though even the storm paused to listen to this strange conversation between two people who were never meant to meet. I must have fallen asleep in the chair. When I woke, dawn light was spilling through the window. The snow had stopped. Jackson lay hidden beneath a thin veil of fog. On the table beside me sat a folded note. The handwriting neat, precise, go with Mark. He'll take you home safely. Don't worry about me. At the bottom, just two initials, VH. Thor barked softly, tail wagging, facing the porch. I ran outside only to find fresh tire tracks black against the new snow, trailing down the mountain road until they vanished among the pines. The morning wind carried the scent of melting snow, the lingering aroma of coffee, and that faint dark trace I was beginning to recognize, the smell of Vincent Hale. He had vanished as if he'd never existed, leaving behind fear and something more profound, a question that refused to fade. Why would a billionaire hide in a mountain vet clinic during a storm? And why do I, who only wanted peace, wish to see him again? In the stillness of morning, I knew one thing for sure. The real storm had only just begun. Morning in Lake Forest had a strange stillness, as if the place didn't belong to the real world. Sunlight filtered through its red maple leaves and spilled across the tiles in shimmering panes, like stained glass in a chapel. I woke from a restless night, the envelope still on the table unsigned. For a moment, I thought of leaving. All I had to do was walk out the gate, call a cab, return to Chicago. Mercy, hold Noah tight and pretend none of this had happened. But reason knew better. The world out there was no longer safe. The name Vincent Hale had changed everything in a way that couldn't be undone. I went downstairs. The housekeeper, a woman with a cool, well-bred poise, made tea in the kitchen. Where is Mr. Hale? I asked. In the gym, East Wing. I blinked. Can he work out in his condition? Miss Foster, he never stops. Her voice was even and steady, like describing a person's unbreakable habit rather than a survival commandment. I thanked her and headed the way she'd indicated. The gym door opened and I stopped short. Light from a large window cut across Vincent's white shirt sleeves rolled high. His left shoulder still bandaged every punch he drove into the heavy bag, crisp, economical, beautiful in its ruthlessness. Sweat darkened the hem of his shirt, tracing cords of muscle down his forearms. When he turned, I caught that gaze, gray-blue, deep and cold, as the first time only now there was a brief softness. Good morning, doctor. Are you aiming to split those stitches to spite me? You can put me back together, can't you? His voice hovered between teasing and truth. I was annoyed, but warmth flickered through me inexplicably, as if the storm inside me had synced to his breath. I stepped closer, snatched the towel from his hand, and said quietly, I came to make sure you're still alive, not to watch you self-destruct. He smiled faintly, fingers brushing the edge of the bandage. I just needed to know I still have enough strength for what's coming. The words sent a slight shiver through me. What's coming? What could be next after everything that happened in Jackson? Do you know who sent those men? I asked. Possibly. In my world, certainty is a luxury. He turned, poured water into a glass. His voice dropping. Vieri won't stop. He thinks I'm holding what he needs, evidence that could bring him down. And he's right. I went still. So you have it, I do, but keeping it means dragging a very long list of people toward death. He looked at me, weariness in his eyes. I tried working with the government. They only wanted me as a bargaining chip. In the end, all that's left is blood. My hands tightened. Deep inside, I felt something for him, not pity, but that complicated mix of fear and trust. What are you going to do next? Get you out of here before Vieri finds this place. And you finish it. Once. At noon, the housekeeper invited me to the East Room for lunch. It sat at the end of a long corridor and opened onto a balcony facing the lake. Oil paintings hung on the walls. Beneath them stood a black ebony piano with slightly worn keys. I touched one. The note rang out clear melancholy like memory. Vincent entered just then, soundless. He stood behind me, his breath at my nape, making me shiver. You play not much. My mother taught me a few pieces. When I was 15, I learned too. My father made me. He said a man only controls the world when he knows how to command sound. I turned and found something unnameable in his look. Nostalgia or regret? He's gone, no. He's alive. He doesn't call me his son anymore. The room was cool. I saw something broken and defiant in his eyes, a solitude sheathed in steel. I said softly, if you carry everything alone one day, the weight will be what breaks you. You think I haven't tried to let go? I think you don't know how. He gave a short, hoarse laugh, then looked straight at me. And you do. Sometimes letting go is the only way to keep what's human in you. Between us, only a few steps remained. Outside, wind rattled the curtains. In the dim light, his eyes found mine warm and dangerous at once. Are you truly not afraid of me, Hannah? I don't know. Maybe I am. But I can't seem to leave. The words slipped out before I could call them back. Vincent's brow lifted. He moved closer until I could feel his heat, the scent of skin with a trace of sandalwood and whiskey. You shouldn't say things like that. Why? Because if I believe you, I won't be able to let you go. We were silent for a long time. Then he left, and I was alone with the wind. I didn't know which frightened me more, the truth he was hiding, or the feeling that I was starting to want to trust him. Toward evening, I walked down to the lake. Its surface lay flat as glass, reflecting sky and red maples. Thor lay at the foot of the steps, his head resting on Mark's boot, the broad-shouldered man Vincent had introduced as temporary protection. Miss Foster, Mr. Hay, told me to take you wherever you choose. What does that mean? 2 options back to Jackson unsafe, or into Chicago safer, but under a new identity. A new identity, alias papers. Life gets easier for a few weeks at least. I stared at the water, thoughts nodded. He wants me to choose. Mr. Hale said the decision has to be yours. I let out a small laugh. A man like Vincent Hale letting me decide? It sounded contradictory and gentle. Before I could answer, Mark took a call. His face tightened. Trouble in Denver. The warehouse was breached. I heard Vincent's voice over the line, so cold it raised gooseflesh along my spine. Lock down the entire system. No one in or out. I'll be there in 2 hours. When Mark hung up, I asked, he's going again? Yes, and this time it may be more than cleanup. That night, I couldn't sleep. Everything seemed to carry Vincent's breath in the East Room, from the unopened bottle on the table to the dark coat he'd left draped over a chair. I stepped onto the balcony and looked down at the lake. Moonlight sketched every ripple, and I saw my reflection, a woman standing inside someone else's world, unsure whether to stay or go. A soft sound behind me. The door opened. Vincent came in wearing a black coat and a bandage peeking at his wrist. You're still up, and you no rest at all. Can't. There's something I have to take back. Worth risking your life, yes. If it's the only thing that lets me end this. I looked at him under the thin moonlight. His face seemed real and distant. You said you'd take me away. I will. But before we go, I must ensure no one is hunting you anymore. He stepped closer, lifted my chin with a light touch. Trust me again, Hannah. I nodded, though uncertainty churned inside me. He bent and kissed my lips, fleeting, as wind searing like a slow burn. When he left, I stood there listening to the engine fade beyond the gates. And for the first time, I understood what it meant to be afraid, because you care too much. That night, there were no stars over Lake Forest. Only me, the East Room, and the echo of an unasked-for kiss, enough to shatter the boundaries between 2 people who were never meant to meet. 3 days later, I was officially working in the Hale Estate's East Wing. The work moved so quietly and precisely that I began to fear the silence. The people I treated never gave real names. They were known only by initials JLK, most of them injured with bullet wounds or deep gashes, stitched neatly closed, but never recorded in any legal medical file. At first, they watched me warily, then accepted me in silence, as if I were an obligatory piece of this world. Vincent rarely appeared. He sent brief messages through Mark. She's learning to look into the dark without losing the light. I couldn't tell if that was praise or a warning. Lila Hale walked in on the 3rd night while I checked the medicine cabinet. She wore a white suit hair in a high knot eyes, sharp and steady, like someone used to running an empire. Ms. Foster, there's a fundraising gala tonight. I want you to attend. I don't belong at a gala. You don't need to belong. You need to appear as a companion. The last word made me pause. Whose companion, Vincent's? It took me a few seconds to understand. I thought he had plenty of people to take. My brother doesn't trust any of them. He brought you here and kept you close but also safe. Consider it a cover. Lila smiled a smile that smelled of steel. Sometimes a cover is the most valid form there is. That evening, I stood before the mirror in the midnight blue gown Lila had sent. The back dipped just enough. The crystal-set neckline caught the light like frozen dew. Thor was curled by the door, whining softly as I bent to lace my shoes. Well, do I look like I belong there? Thor only sighed, brown eyes reflecting my silhouette in the mirror, a woman no longer sure she was walking into a party or a battlefield. The gala was held in the Western Conservatory, a garden of white roses. Crystal chandeliers hung like icicles, their light scattering across the reflecting pool at the center, turning the room into a world of glass so beautiful it felt unreal. When Vincent entered, everything around me blurred. He wore a black suit, a white shirt open at the collar, hair slicked back, and the scar at his shoulder hidden beneath the fabric. No introduction was needed. Everyone recognized him, the man America had presumed gone. He extended his arm and stopped before me. May I? I nodded, placing my hand in his. His skin was cool, and my heart burned so hot it hurt to breathe. The evening began with violins. Wine rippled in crystal glasses. People spoke in smiles, traded hollow wishes, and exchanged measuring glances. Vincent remained composed, the calm of a man who knew every secret in the room. Are you actually going to donate? I murmured. Sometimes a check is the quickest way to make people believe you're harmless. He leaned in, breath warm at my ear, close enough that I had to step back half a pace. And you, Hannah, do you think you're harmless? I answered under my breath. Eyes on my glass. I'm just the one trying to stitch up what others break. That's why I need you here. My heart stuttered. Before I could reply, a man approached Stefano Vieri. He was tall, silver-haired, with a cultivated smile too polished to be real. Vincent Hale, I thought you'd frozen to death. And I thought you'd drown in debt, Vincent said, voice flat, expressionless. Vieri chuckled and looked at me. And who is this veterinarian? I stiffened. He knew. Vincent tightened his hold on my hand just enough to steady and warn. She's the reason I came back. Conversations around us stalled for a beat. The air froze. Vieri's brows lifted. A hint of a smile ghosted across his face. An interesting reason. I hope she's worth it. He moved on, leaving the scent of smoke and strong liquor. I whispered, What did you do? Protected you, by letting the whole room think I'm your weakness. No, by making them believe I have a weakness. His gaze followed Vieri, cold as tempered glass. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one who strikes your heart, it's the one who doesn't know you have one. When the final piece began, Vincent asked me to dance. His hand settled lightly on my back, and every sense went off balance. I heard my heartbeat fold into the music, and for one moment, I forgot everything: magazines, blood threats, until there was only us under crystal light falling like a rain of stars. He said I once thought I'd never dance again, voice low and rough. Why? Because the last time I did, the woman in my arms was dead within 2 hours. I looked up, startled. He smiled, a slight sad curve softer than the violin's line. You see, I'm bad luck. I don't believe that. Then stay with me here tonight and prove me wrong. His words rang in my head like a summons sweet and dangerous. After the gala, the night air was cold and scented with lavender from the western garden. Walking beside him along the stone path, I listened to our footsteps blend with the hush of the lake. Vieri knows me, I said softly. He knows more than you think. Then why keep me here at all? Because I don't believe he'll touch you while I'm looking him in the eye. He stopped and turned. His face was half lit, half shadowed in the moonlight, as if good and evil shared the same home. You should hate me, Hannah. I dragged you into this. I don't. I want to understand. Understand what... Why did you choose me when you could have trusted hundreds? Vincent was silent. Then he leaned in very quietly. Because you saw my blood and still wanted to save me. I had no answer. Words felt useless, only the wind and the warmth of his hand grazing my cheek light enough to make my heart ache. Back in my room, I opened the door and flicked on the light. A black note lay on the table. No envelope, just a single slanted line in red ink: blood will spill. He can't hide forever. I let the paper fall, fingers shaking. Outside the window, a shadow slipped across the garden, quick as wind. Vincent had been right, his world didn't allow peace. And I had gone too far to turn back. I stared at the sheet of paper on the table, as if the words might disappear by looking long enough. But no, the red ink stayed where it was, slanted, sleek, and terrifyingly precise. Blood will spill. He can't hide forever. Lavender from the western garden still lingered in the air, mixing with the smell of old paper, a sharp, musty scent that knotted my stomach. I didn't know what made me shake more, the threat itself, or the thought that someone had slipped this into my room without anyone noticing. The door swung open. Mark stepped in his face like carved stone. You shouldn't be here alone, Hannah. Do you know about this note? No. But we expected something. Vieri has sent warnings to anyone who dares to stand with Vincent. I looked at him, willing my voice to stay steady. And you think I'm one of Vincent's? Mark gave a brief smile and didn't answer. He picked up the paper and slid it into his coat pocket. I'll get it to him. You lock your door and don't trust anyone except me or Lila. Even after he left, I could still hear his heavy footsteps fading down the corridor, blending with the hiss of night wind against the windows. I sat on the edge of the bed. Part of me wanted to leave immediately, returning to a world of ordinary shifts and medical charts. But another part, the part Vincent had already touched, couldn't. The next morning when I came into the kitchen, Lila had a cup of black tea in her hand. My brother left early. Where Denver? A warehouse was hit. He told you he didn't need to. I know how to read his schedule. She looked up, eyes sharp as a blade. I don't know what you are to Vincent, Hannah. But understand this, my brother isn't a man who can be saved by kindness. I never thought I could save him. Good. Then don't try. Her words fell like a cold sentence. I didn't argue. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, either redemption or a reason to stay. By afternoon, the sky broke into rain. I returned to the East Wing clinic and checked the stitches on several of the security team. One man with an O tattooed on his wrist said quietly, Dr. our boss. He rarely lets anyone touch his blood. You're the first. I paused, the suture needle hovering in the air. He saved me. No, you saved him. Which means you're holding your own life in someone else's hands. I didn't fully understand, but the look in his eyes chilled me. That night, when the wind shifted, Vincent came back. He walked into the house in a smoke-dusted suit, face tired but eyes burning bright. He stopped when he saw me, a flicker of surprise passing over him. You're still here. You thought I'd run. I hoped you would. He pulled off his gloves, each motion slow and exact, like shedding the last layer of armor. The warehouse burned, I asked. Leveled. But I got what they tried to bury. He set a small silver hard drive from his inner pocket on the table. Evidence more than that. It made me a target, the list of Vieri's money launderers, and all the off-book contracts between him and some of the city's most prominent investors. I went cold. What will you do with it? I don't know. Hand it to the FBI and a few more people die. Keep it, and I'll be next. His voice was even unafraid, but I saw it clearly in his eyes' utter loneliness. How long have you lived in this kind of balance long enough to stop believing in justice? But you still believe in me. Vincent said nothing. He looked at me for a long moment, gaze cutting through the thin defenses I'd put up. Then he stepped close, very close. Maybe because you're the only thing in my world. That can't be bought. I didn't have time to answer. His lips touched my forehead, a fleeting brush that threw my heart into chaos. The following night, the estate hosted a closed meeting of Hale Dynamics shareholders. I wasn't allowed inside, but the voices leaking from the conference room were enough to set my nerves on edge. You're handing yourself to Vieri. If we don't act, he keeps pulling the strings. Vincent, this isn't the old game anymore. This is war. I stood outside and heard every word. When the door opened, Lila came out, anger sparking in her eyes. My brother is killing himself, she said quietly. And you, whether you mean to or not, are making him believe there's something worth surviving for. I didn't reply. Through the gap in the door, I watched Vincent's silhouette straight-backed, one hand on a glass of whiskey, the other spread over a wide map. The light caught the scar at his neck. It looked like a shackle. When the meeting ended, he found me in the hallway. You heard all of it enough. Then you know there's no way back for me. There's always a way back if you stop. He gave a small, weary smile. Stopping means letting someone else write the ending. I wanted to argue, but his voice was too calm. Hannah, you once said saving is instinct. Can you save a man who doesn't want to be saved? I can try. Vincent dipped his head, murmured, and that is precisely what makes you most dangerous. He walked away before I could untangle the meaning. Late that night, I sat in the library. Wind slipped through the window, lifting a paper on the table. I reached to catch it. Another letter. No envelope, the same slanted hand, but this time in black ink. When he falls, you'll know who's real. Ice spread through me. He did that mean Vincent? I stepped into the corridor to find Mark, but it was empty. In the garden's glass reflection, a stranger's shadow slid past. A stiff gust snuffed the candle on the table. Thor growled low, ears pricked. I heard an engine turn over at the gate. An SUV pulled away into the night. Dread pulled in me. I didn't know if it was Vincent or someone else. I only knew a strange fear was growing, not fear for his safety, but fear that I would trust him so completely I'd forget to be afraid. I stood at the window near dawn, watching rainfall on the stone court. Vincent's shape emerged from the dark coat-soaked steps, heavy blood seeping at his left shoulder. He looked up at me through the glass. No words were needed. I understood the real storm had just begun. I ran down and opened the door. He collapsed against me, breath ragged. He knows. Who Vieri? He has someone inside. I held him tighter, the smell of fresh blood mingling with gunpowder. Outside, thunder rolled like a warning from fate itself, and I knew that from this moment on what lay between Vincent and me was no longer a promise. It was a beginning that could not be undone. That night, the wind wasn't cold yet. It seeped into me like a damp thread slipping through layers of skin. I eased Vincent onto the chaise, my hands slick with his blood. But it wasn't the wound that made me tremble. It was the way he looked at me, clear-cold and utterly trusting. "He has someone on the inside," he rasped. "Who, I don't know yet. But he knows everything, including that you're here." I bent over him, disinfecting the wound at his right shoulder. The sting of alcohol, the metallic tang of blood, and his quickened breath blended into something unfamiliar, half survival, half temptation. My hand brushed an old scar, this one closer to his heart. It was fainter than the others, as if someone had once tried to carve the past away with a knife. "Who did this one?" He didn't answer immediately. He just looked at me for a long time, then said softly, "The person I trusted most." I froze. "Someone who betrayed you?" "No. Someone I had to betray first." A draft slipped through the cracked window, making the candle flame sway. Light danced over his face, beautiful and ruthless like a breathing statue. Vincent drifted to sleep on the couch. I sat beside him, wiping away the blood and changing the bandage. When I started to rise, his fingers closed around my wrist. Unthinking, gentle, but enough to stop my heart. "Don't go," he whispered, eyes still shut. I murmured, "I'm only getting water. It's quieter here." He sounded like he was dreaming, but I knew it wasn't. It was fear, the kind he rarely let show even facing death. I stayed watching him sleep in silence. By candlelight, his features softened, long lashes, a straight bridge of nose lips, pressed as if still fighting an endless nightmare. I wanted to believe this man was only a victim of a brutal world, not someone who'd helped build it. But inside me, another voice spoke. "Don't forget he's a Hale." By morning, the entire estate felt shrouded in gloom. Mark reported that the hard drive of data had been copied. Someone internal had pulled a portion before Vincent brought it back. Lila entered the conference room, her composure fraying. "We have a traitor." "Who?" Mark asked. "The encryption lead, Gideon Marsh." I knew the name. The blonde man who often appeared in the clinic always carrying a briefcase consistently lowered his head when he passed Vincent. Vincent sat still back, straight eyes on his coffee cup, as if listening to a voice from another world. "I trusted him," he said slowly. "Enough to give him a key to the data vault." "Where is he now?" Lila asked. "Gone. Likely halfway to Vieri." The air thickened. A chill ran the length of my spine. At noon, Vincent went to the veranda and sat brooding by the lake. I brought him coffee and said nothing. He nodded, gaze tracking the surface as it shattered under small gusts. "Do you believe a soul can be washed clean?" I said. "I wouldn't have chosen this job if I did. I know how to stitch, not erase scars." "Let's let you try." I smiled faintly. "You're not a pet." "No, but sometimes I wish I were." He turned and his look unsettled me. There was something too real in his voice, as if among all the layers of lies this moment belonged to Vincent's most authentic self. Just as I was about to sleep that evening, my door flew open. Lila stood there, face drawn tight. "You need to leave, now." "What happened?" Vieri released a video. "He has footage of my brother and you." I went cold. "Footage from the Crystal Light Gala. The embrace, the dance, the way you looked at each other. He's cut it into proof that Vincent's fallen for a trap. That's his angle of attack." I stepped back, heart nodding. "Does he know he does? And that's why I'm here. If Vincent decides you're a liability, no one can save you. Not even me." I don't remember how I reached the hall. When I got to Vincent's office, the door was ajar. He sat at his desk lamplight, laying a calm, frightening stillness over his face. On the screen, the two of us were dancing, his hand at my back, his eyes on me with a truth no one could deny. Vieri didn't need to lie, only to show a truth missing its other half. "You don't trust me?" I asked, my voice unsteady. "I'm not allowed to trust anyone anymore. You think I betrayed you? I think you're what he wants me to protect so he can strike through you." His voice was hoarse, low, tired. I took a step forward, tears slipping before I could stop them. "Then, what will you do? Tie me up, hide me, or hand me off?" Vincent stood and came close. His eyes weren't ice blue anymore in the amber light, but a dull gray the sky before a storm. "I don't know," he said very softly. "If you disappear, I'll have no reason to end this." I looked at him, then did what I hadn't expected of myself. I reached up and cupped his cheek. "If you can't trust me, then trust yourself. Trust that you chose the right person to stand beside you." 1 second. 2. He didn't push me away. His hand gripped my waist and pulled me in. The kiss came hard, not gentle, rational, but flame. His breath was rough. His hands held me as if he feared I might dissolve whiskey skin. Old blood, everything blurred. For a heartbeat, I forgot it all. Very fear even the possibility that he might be the blade at my throat. When we broke apart, Vincent turned away, voice scraped raw. I shouldn't have done that. But you did, because I need to remember I can still feel. He looked at me, eyes like a depthless fall. I'm leaving for Denver tomorrow. It'll be dangerous if I don't come back. Don't say that. Leave this place. Lila will arrange it, and don't look for me. I tried to protest, but he'd already turned away. The door closed between us so softly it felt like goodbye. By morning, the estate held only wind and silence. Mark said Vincent had left before dawn. I sat in my room beside Thor, staring at the photo Vieri had blasted across the news sites. The headline crawled across the screen. Billionaire hail love and betrayal, who holds the kill. Switch below it, the image of him and me beneath the crystal lights. That look beautiful real now turned into evidence against him. I clenched the phone. For the first time, I understood how being loved can also mean being used to destroy. And as the shadows lengthened down the corridor, one thing became certain. This storm no longer belonged to Vincent alone. It had taken me to, and there was no exit called safety. Denver greeted us with a heavy, steady rain. Droplets slid down the car windows, smearing the city lights into streaks. I sat in the back seat, catching Vincent's reflection in the rearview, his face tense, eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. Beside him, Mark drove without a word. The air inside the car was so thick it felt like it swallowed every sound. Where are we going? I asked. The South Industrial Zone. Where Gideon's hiding, Mark said. You sure Vincent's never wrong? I glanced at Vincent. He stayed silent, but the hand resting on his knee had clenched tight. Veins stood out beneath sun-browned skin, the only sign of a storm still raging inside him. If he has what you need, then what? I asked softly. He answered, voice low and cold, yet edged with pain. I'll take it back. And if he sold me out, I'll make sure he remembers why people fear the name Hale. A shiver ran through me, yet something else stirred beneath the fear, a tenderness I didn't want to name. Maybe because I knew beneath that ruthless shell was a man quietly burning himself to keep others from drowning in the dark. The industrial park was deserted, just old warehouses and the metallic reek of damp rust. Slanted rain threw sickly yellow reflections across the pitted pavement. Mark pulled up in front of an abandoned factory. He's inside. 2 unfamiliar cars are behind the building. Vincent checked his gun, familiar, efficient, icy. I caught his hand and whispered, Promise me you won't kill him. He turned and met my eyes, so deep, pained, and uncertain, I wished I could return the words. Sometimes not killing is the crueler choice. Then he opened the door and stepped into the rain. Thunder cracked in the distance. Mark and I followed, keeping to a line of rusted containers. Inside the warehouse, a dim yellow light leaked through the seam of a steel door. When Vincent shoved it open, the hinges screamed a long, dry rasp like an old beast's breath. Gideon sat on a metal chair, hands shaking around a glass of liquor. He lurched to his feet when he saw Vincent. Vincent, I didn't mean to sell me to Vieri. Vincent cut in, voice low and terrifying because it was so calm. I had no choice. He has my daughter. You think he'll spare her if he gets the drive? Gideon fell silent. Vincent stepped closer and pulled an identical hard drive from his pocket. You stole a copy, but you didn't know the real one has a dual lock. Only I can open it. Gideon's eyes went glassy. Vieri will kill me. He'll kill you either way. Vincent set the drive on the table, speaking quietly. I can save the girl, but you have to tell me where he is. A long moment unspooled. Rain hammered the tin roof loud as my heart. At last, Gideon's voice broke, the Orpheum Hotel. Top floor. But Vincent, he's not alone. He has her. Vincent stilled. Who? Evelyn Romano. Your father's woman? I didn't understand it all, but the look in Vincent's eyes as pain, fury, and a depthless despair made questions impossible. He nodded, stepped back and said, Only, thank you. Now go, Gideon, while you can. Gideon rose like a man freshly pardoned. He hadn't reached the door when a bullet shattered the window and punched straight through his chest. Blood arced bright against the wall. I screamed. Vincent yanked me down, shielding me. More shots ripped the air rounds, chewing into the steel crates around us. Vieri's men, Mark shouted. Vincent tossed me a small USB. Take this and run. What about you? I'll hold them. I shook my head, rain and tears indistinguishable. No, you'll die. I died a long time ago, Hannah. The words slid into me like a blade. After that, everything was chaos gunfire, shouting the reek of powder mixing with the cold rain. Mark dragged me toward a side door and shoved it open. Go, Hannah, Vincent will find you. I tried to turn back, but an explosion hurled me to the floor. Fire bloomed, devouring the warehouse in a roar. Through the smoke, I saw Vincent, staggering, blood on his shoulder, still standing between me and the guns. I don't know how long I cried or screamed. When Mark hauled me into the car, my hand was still welded around the USB, and my heart felt like I'd lost the whole world. We left the industrial park just before dawn. Behind us, the warehouse burned, a column of black smoke hanging over Denver like a curse. Mark drove in silence. I watched the rain carve knives down the glass. Is he alive? Mark was quiet for a long time, then said, If it's Vincent, I never dare assume he's dead. But sometimes, living is the crueler thing. By afternoon, we stopped at a highway rest area. I sat at a wooden table staring at the small USB in my hand. Outside, thin sunlight pushed through mist and caught the engraving on the back H.A. Hale archive I asked. Mark nodded. What he's spent his life protecting. What's inside the truth. And sometimes truth kills faster than bullets. I tightened my grip. It felt like I was holding his life and a fuse that could burn us both to ash. While Mark checked the car that evening, I stepped under the eaves. Rain again, fine as breath. In the gray hush, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and my heart stopped. Vincent. He stood there, clothes-drenched hair dripping, face pale, but eyes blazing. I couldn't stop myself. I ran to him and held on. He was ice cold, but his heartbeat was fierce. You're alive. I promised, didn't I? I broke down then, relief and hurt in the same breath. He lifted a hand to smooth my hair, whispering, I couldn't let you leave without knowing I was still breathing. And Gideon dead. But before he died, he told me something I can't ignore. He stepped back and met my eyes. Vieri isn't just after me. He's after you. I froze. Me. He knows you're the one thing that makes me hesitate. He'll use that. I gripped his hand. Then don't give him the chance. He managed a tired, warming smile. Teaching me how to live, are you no. Just reminding you you're not dead yet. Vincent leaned in, resting his forehead against mine. Rain kept time with our breathing, our heartbeats falling into the same rhythm. When this is over, he said, I'll take you somewhere no one knows my name and no one can make you afraid. And if it never ends, then at least I will have promised. As we left Denver, the sky opened in faint ribbons of light after the rain. I leaned my head against the window, watching the city fall away behind us, a tangle of loss and fragile hope in my chest. Vincent held my hand, saying nothing. There was nothing to say. We both knew peace would only be borrowed if it came. In the last breath of the storm, I understood love isn't always a saving light. Sometimes it's the one darkness that still makes you want to live. 2 days after leaving Denver, we reached Redwood, a small town tucked between pine forests and fog, the kind of place Vincent said knows the seasons of falling leaves, but not the news. The road up to the house he'd chosen curled through towering trunks, the resinous scent of pine thick and damp. The sky was the color of an unfinished painting, and I realized there was a strange safety in that wildness, the kind only those hunted can feel. The house stood apart on the hilltop pitched roof. Dark wooden doors, a faint thread of smoke from the chimney. Everything about it felt arranged by Vincent's silent solid, hidden like the man himself. He said I came here years ago, opening the door for me. Alone, no, with someone I trusted. And where is that person now? Left behind in the past. His voice was low and even, but something fractured halfway through the sentence. I didn't ask more. In Vincent's world, silence is sometimes the only way to keep what's gone intact. By afternoon, fog draped the valley. The light thinned until everything inside the house looked veiled with smoke. I changed his bandage. The wound had finally healed. You heal fast, I said, trying to thread a little relief into my tone. Habit, he answered, flinching as I touched it. A habit of getting hurt. A habit of surviving. I laughed, but it faded when I met his gaze. Something in it both distant and so near I couldn't breathe. You're still not afraid of me, Hannah. What good would fear do? At least you'd keep your distance. Maybe I don't want to anymore. The words left me light as breath, but their echo turned the room strangely still. Vincent didn't answer. He just looked at me for a long time. And in that moment, amid antiseptic and warm wood, I felt a tenderness growing gentle and dangerous at once. Night fell quickly. Rain began. It drummed on the roof like a song without melody, slow and deep. I stood on the porch wrapped in a thick shawl. Thor curled at my feet, head on my boot, his brown eyes solemn. Vincent stood by the doorway with a glass of whiskey. You know, he said, I once planned to hide here for the rest of my life. Hide from whom myself? I turned to him. Light from the house threw him half real, half mirage. You can't hide forever. Vieri will find you. I'm not afraid of him. Then what are you afraid of? That I'll make you regret trusting me? I set my glass on the rail and stepped closer, not looking at him. If I were going to regret it, I'd have left back in Jackson. And if I told you this ends in blood, then at least I'll know I chose the right person to stand with. For the first time, he smiled a genuine smile without chill or mask. His hand brushed my shoulder, warm, steady. You don't know what you're saying, Hannah. I do. I don't want to take it back. Rain thickened. Drops shattered on the tiles and slid off like silver. In that sound, he bent and pressed his lips to my forehead. A kiss that asked for nothing, hurried nowhere, and still made me tremble. "Thank you for not leaving," he said. "You say that like I might have to tomorrow, because tomorrow may not be this quiet." At dawn, an engine stopped at the gate. Mark came in, raincoat dripping, face grave. "Latest intel, Vieri's missing." "No one knows where he is." "Missing?" Vincent asked. "Seen leaving the Orpheum Hotel with a red-haired woman. Then gone. Evelyn Romano." Vincent said softly. "Who is she?" I asked. "The woman who used to be my fiancé." The room seemed to sink. A chill ran down my spine. "She's on his side." "She's on no one's side. Evelyn picks whichever side has more power." He stood and turned to the window. The rain had stopped, but the sky stayed gray. "If Vieri's alive, he'll come back. But this time his strike won't be at me. It'll be at you." By noon, Vincent had vanished from the house. Mark said he'd gone to check satellite signals, but I knew it wasn't about tech. He was looking for a way to end it somehow. I sat alone in the library, staring at the dust-coated shelves. A leather notebook lay on a middle shelf. No label, no name. When I opened it, I found slanted lines in the script Vincent's hand. The day she left, I understood that love saves no one. It only makes you weak the moment you must be strong. I built my world with violence, and now love is the only thing that can destroy it. I shut the book. Tears dotted the cold leather. I wanted to believe he would come back, but reason knew men like Vincent don't always return. Night brought the rain again. Thor barked once, then fell silent. I heard footsteps outside, heavy dragging. The door opened. Vincent stepped in, soaked his eyes dull in the light. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "At Evelyn's place. And she's not alive." I went still. "Was it you?" "No. When I got there, she was already dead. One bullet. Beside her, a packet for me." He pulled a sheet from his coat and set it on the table. The handwriting was rushed, a woman's hand. "Vieri knows everything. He's very close. Trust no one, not even the person standing next to you." The air congealed. Vincent's gaze lifted from the paper and fixed on me. "Hannah, you've been here with me from the start. Did you know you before we met in Jackson?" My chest tightened like a fist. "You're suspecting me, I'm asking, because she's dead, or because you need someone to blame." Vincent said nothing. But that look tore me in two. I turned away, my eyes burning. "If you don't trust me, turn me over to Mark. I don't owe you anything." I made for the door, but his voice came rough and low. "I want to trust you. My world doesn't allow it." That night, I slept in the small room off the kitchen. Wind scraped the window. Branches rattled the roof. I didn't know if Vincent was still awake. I only knew I was afraid for the first time since meeting him, not of Vieri, but of what was cracking between us, the thin, bleeding line of trust. A sound jolted me close to dawn metal striking metal in the cellar, then silence. I threw on a coat, grabbed a flashlight, and went down. The basement door was ajar. Weak light leaked from within, and in the center of the room stood Vincent, opening a large safe. He turned as I entered. The beam split his face in two, half light, half shadow. "You shouldn't be here. What are you hiding?" "Something that can save us. Or kill us both." I stepped closer. Heart banging. Inside the safe lay a black case cracked open. Files were stacked inside, along with photographs, and in one of them, I saw myself at the Jackson clinic taken long before I met him. "Vincent," I whispered, "you were watching me before all this?" He didn't answer. His gaze drifted, and in the thin, wavering light, I no longer knew which of us was being deceived. And I understood that from this moment on, love was no longer a refuge. It had become a blade hidden beneath velvet. The air in the basement was thick. The weak cone of the flashlight warped everything like an old film replaying in my head. The black case gaped open on the floor, and photographs spilled across the cold cement. In every image, I saw myself at the Jackson clinic in the market. Even that afternoon on the Bainbridge ferry, a coffee cup in my hand. They'd been taken from a distance at precise clinical angles, not casual surveillance. They were evidence of a plan. "You knew me before I met you." My voice was hoarse, frayed by the chill. Vincent didn't answer right away. He closed the case as if he could bury the question with it. "I never meant for you to find out. But you let me believe we met by chance. Nothing is chance in my world, Hannah." I stepped back, heart racing, whether from fear or anger I couldn't tell. "So why approach me? What am I in your story tool, witness? Or just an easy mark you happen to like?" Vincent lifted his head. He didn't look away. "At first, you were someone I had to watch. Vieri mentioned your name among contacts on a covert medical project. I thought you worked for him. And you figured the best way was to walk into my life so I'd save you." "No." His voice dropped, shaking for the first time. "The best way was to leave. I couldn't." Silence stretched. Wind slipped through the basement door like a sigh. "Since when?" "Since that first night in Jackson." I gave a brittle laugh, tears slipping anyway. I thought you were someone I could trust. You still can. No, Vincent, you can't trust a person who turned you into a file. He reached for me. I moved away. In that instant, I saw him clearly, not only the man who'd saved me, but the one who had shattered what I believed. I left the basement without a word. Outside, rain hammered down. Fog drowned the path. Thor trailed me, but all I wanted was to run. Vincent called out Hannah. His voice roughened to a ragged edge. I stopped, not turning. You already have everything reasons leverage secrets. What more do you want? I want you to stay. I let out a laugh that didn't sound like me. Stay so you can keep taking notes, or so Vieri can find me faster. So I can tell you the truth. He came closer and took my shoulders. This time I didn't pull away. His eyes bright through the rain weren't cold anymore. I watched you, yes, but not to use you. I wanted to know how someone as hurt as you still chooses to save others. And you think understanding me will absolve you? No, Hannah. If I could understand you, I might understand the part of me that's still human. His voice rasped, every word brushing a place I didn't want touched. Rain soaked our hair, our clothes blending with tears I couldn't tell were his or mine. I don't need you to understand me, Vincent. I need you not to turn love into an assignment. I slipped from his arms and walked into the fog, leaving behind the wind, a look I knew I would carry for the rest of my life. I hid in the small back room where he kept the veterinary crates he'd brought from Jackson. The parchment note he'd left before lay on the table, still faintly scented with ink. I opened it and reread the uneven lines. If I ever frightened you, blame the world that made me. But when I saw you, I knew I no longer wanted to belong to that world. I folded the paper and pressed a hand to my chest. My heart pounded not with rage, but with something more stubborn, a love unsure whether to trust or to forget. By nightfall, fog drowned the valley. Vincent knocked on my door. He stayed outside leaning against the frame. I'm leaving Redwood in the morning. Where I can't say. The fewer who know, the safer you are. I don't need to be protected by being left behind. He looked at me, eyes finding the pain I'd tried to hide. If I stay, you become their target. I won't let that happen. And if I say I don't care, then I have to care twice as much. The words closed my throat. Vincent, I've lost my faith in a lot of things. I haven't stopped believing in you. He was quiet for a long time. Then he stepped in bent and touched his lips to my forehead. Slow, tender aching, like goodbye. If I survive, I'll come back. You've said that before. This time I'm saying it with everything I have left. I didn't sleep. The rain had quit, but damp wind threaded the doorframe. I sat at the window, watching a stray moon wrestle the clouds. Images of Vincent kept surfacing, his silhouette in the rain, the firelit ruin in Denver, the conflicted look in the basement. A man both savior and the one who broke me. Then a soft sound on the porch. Thor whined and ran to the door. I opened it. Mark stood there grim. You need to come with me. What's wrong? Vieri isn't missing. He's coming here. We left the house at night, the road swallowed in thick fog. Mark drove the headlights, cleaving the dark like knives. I held Thor close, eyes fixed on the black ahead. Where's Vincent 15 minutes ahead? He's drawing Vieri the other way. No, he can't alone. It's the only way. Mark's voice was tight with control. Beneath it, I heard the fear he wouldn't name. What if he dies? He's died 100 times, Hannah. And still comes back. It sounded like faith, but there was a shadow in Mark's tone, the fear that Vincent might not have a reason to live this time. An hour later, Mark's phone buzzed. The screen showed 2 words, signal in. He answered, listened, then turned to me, eyes gone dark. They've got him. I went still. Something inside me shattered. We have to go back. No, he's bait now. If you go, you'll die. I don't care, I cried, the words breaking through tears. I won't abandon him again. Mark pulled over and studied me for a long moment. You don't understand, Hannah. If Vieri gets you, Vincent will give him anything. You are the one weakness he can't afford. I said nothing, tears falling. And if that's true, I whispered, then I'll become the one thing he can't touch, even if it kills me. At first light, pale bands pierced the pines. Smoke lifted from the South Vincent's route. The smell of burning rode the wind, harsh and stinging. Mark tightened his grip on the wheel, eyes locked that way. You have to trust him. I don't have any other choice. Inside me, everything blurred together. Love, anger, fear, and a fragile faith cruel in its thinness. Vincent Hale might be a liar, a sinner, the man who watched me, but he is also the only one who makes me want to live. And somewhere in that smoke and fire, I knew he was still fighting. Not just Vieri, but the darkness inside himself. Once a man finds a reason to love, death is sometimes only part of the promise that didn't finish. That morning, Redwood lay under a heavy shroud of fog. Before the sun could pierce the pines, smoke was already rising from the south the way Vincent had gone. I stood on the steps of the house, listening to the forest breathe. Every heartbeat felt like a warning. Thor lay pressed against my feet, his brown eyes fixed on the distance, strangely silent. Mark came out of the house, the smell of smoke still clinging to his coat. He didn't look at me right away, he just exhaled. Hannah, we picked up a signal, an explosion at Canyon Bridge. No survivors. I didn't speak, didn't scream, just stood there. All sound fell away until only the quiet fall of rain remained. In my head, Vincent's scattered words echoed, "If I survive, I'll come back. If not, believe that I'm still keeping my promise. Keep it? How?" When all that's left is ash and smoke. By noon, I decided to go. Mark tried to stop me, but I only said I need to see how far he got. We drove down the winding dirt road past soaked trunks. The closer we came to the canyon, the thicker the fog grew. When smoke blurred into fog, I saw the remnants of a battle-shattered glass, the charred frame of a car, and on the ground a small silver object, a lighter engraved H.A. I picked it up cold heavy, still smelling of gunpowder. My fingers shook. Vincent. His name slipped out like a prayer. Mark set a hand on my shoulder, voice low. We didn't find a body. He might have gotten out, or he might not want to be found. 3 months later, I left Redwood with Thor, and what little remained from the old house. I returned to Boston, where the streets were as damp as early season. I rented a small room near the Hare Foundation, where I'd worked before everything began. People told me I looked different, quieter, with a soft and sad light in my eyes. Sometimes I felt him near in the faint rattle of a glass door, when the wind rose in long night rains, where the steady tapping on the eaves sounded exactly like his steps on wooden floors. I opened the USB Vincent had left. It contained no financial data, no secret dossiers like Mark had said, only a single video. When the screen lit, his face appeared tired, smoke-streaked, but his eyes calm. If you're watching this, it means I didn't come back. I don't know if I deserve to be remembered, but I want you to understand. In a world where people live only to survive, you were the one reason I wanted to live for real. He paused, then smiled that familiar smile that made me angry and weak. I used to think I had all the answers. Then I met you and learned, sometimes love isn't holding on. It's letting the other person keep living, even without you. The image trembled maybe with wind, and he said the last line. If one day you hear a knock at dawn, don't be afraid. It might be the wind, but it might also be me. I closed the laptop, my hands still shaking. Outside, the rain began. Thor lifted his head and whined softly as if he understood. In the months that followed, I returned to work. Every shift, every patient, every small life I saved made me think of him, the man who once said survival is a habit. I began to learn how to live again, not by forgetting, but by carrying him into the most ordinary breaths. Each morning I walked across the Charles and bought a low foam cappuccino like before. Sometimes I'd see a man in a black coat across the street, tall hands in his pockets turned away. When I blinked, he was gone. A trick of the eye. Or maybe a promise kept in his own way. One afternoon leaving Hera, rain fell thin as mist. A letter with no return address lay in my mailbox. Thick paper black ink, just one line. Please don't wait for me. But don't stop believing. Beneath it, the familiar mark, H.A. I stood in the empty corridor for a long time, warmed and hurting. No signature, no pledge, just that line, and it was enough to know he was alive. And sometimes knowing the one you love is still out there. It's enough. A year passed. Redwood Canyon, the storms, and the long nights became memories. But whenever I watched dawn climb over the red brick rows, I remembered his words. If you hear a knock at dawn, don't be afraid. A knock came at the wooden door as I made coffee this morning, 3 taps even, and slow. I set the cup down, heart racing loud enough to hear. When I opened the door, only an envelope lay on the step. No one stood there. A breeze lifted my hair. The air held damp wood and a trace of whiskey, his scent exactly. Inside the envelope was an old photo Vincent and I snapped secretly at the crystal-lit gala. On the back, a handwritten line. It's still the light that brings me back. I closed my fingers around the photo, a tight smile trembling through tears. Wherever he was, I knew he was still looking this way toward me and the dawn he once dreamed of. Amid the brutal turns of life, the love between him and me was never easy to explain. It wasn't neat or pretty the way stories are told, but it was true. It is so true that torn by lies, fear, and loss, it could still make a hardened soul believe that some things cannot be bought in this world. I looked out the window, dawn rising, pale light filtering through layers of fog, as if the whole world were taking a long breath after the storm. And so was I. If you can hear me, I'm still living and believing. Thor barked softly. Light brushed my face, a rare, fragile piece, but real. If you've ever believed love can redeem a lost soul, leave a heart share this story and tell me, what do you think about love? Because somewhere out there, another Vincent may already be on his way back with the dawn.